Imagine drifting downward through the ocean, past the playful chaos of the surface where waves sparkle and fish look, well, like fish. Fins where you expect fins, eyes that look back at you with something resembling mutual understanding. But then, as the water darkens and the last familiar shapes dissolve into blue haze, something strange happens. The rules you thought governed life quietly excuse themselves and leave the building. And in their place, an entirely different set of instructions clocks in for the night shift. This is the part of the ocean where animals stop asking, "How do I look?" and start asking, "How am I still alive?" It is also where evolution appears to have had a long, experimental phase and never quite grown out of it. Down here, fish don't politely resemble aquarium posters. They stretch, sag, glow, vanish, and sometimes look like they were assembled during turbulence. If surface animals are designed with clean lines and symmetry, deep-sea creatures look like nature was sketching with a broken pencil in the dark. And yet, every single one of those odd shapes is a solution, not a mistake. If this calm look at why so many ocean creatures look nothing like surface life helps you unwind tonight, please like the video, subscribe to the Deep Sea Documentary channel, and leave a comment sharing when and where you're listening, so this slow science can reach more people who drift off to sleep with the deep ocean. The first thing to understand is that the deep ocean is not just the surface ocean, but farther away. It is an entirely separate world stacked beneath us, layer after layer, each one more detached from our everyday experience. We tend to imagine the ocean as a big swimming pool with fish at different depths, but that mental image collapses pretty quickly. Once you realize most of the ocean exists in conditions humans were never meant to casually visit. The deep sea is not merely unfamiliar. It is hostile in ways that quietly, relentlessly reshape life over millions of years. That is why the animals down there feel so alien. Our brains evolved to recognize patterns from our own environment, and the deep sea does not care about those patterns. It rewards efficiency over elegance, survival over symmetry, and persistence over speed. The result is a parade of creatures that seem to challenge our definition of what an animal is supposed to look like. Some appear unfinished, others exaggerated, and a few look like they are actively trying to unnerve you, which, whilst to be fair, might be a very effective strategy. What makes this even more fascinating is that these animals are not rare accidents. They represent the dominant form of life in the largest habitat on Earth. The deep ocean is not a side quest in the story of life. It is the main map. While humans argue over land borders, the deep sea quietly occupies most of the planet, filled with organisms that have been evolving under conditions that surface life never experiences. If Earth were a house, the deep ocean would be most of the rooms, and we would be standing awkwardly on the welcome mat. So why do these creatures look so different from the animals we know? It is tempting to say they are primitive or less evolved, but that idea falls apart instantly. These organisms are not behind, they are specialized. They are finely tuned to their surroundings in ways that would make surface animals fail almost immediately. Drop a tuna into the deep ocean, and it would struggle like a marathon runner suddenly asked to perform ballet on the moon. Meanwhile, the creatures that already live there would carry on exactly as planned, because this environment shaped every detail of their bodies. There is also a psychological element at play. Humans are visual creatures, and we judge normality by appearance. When something lacks familiar features, we label it strange. But the deep sea does not owe us familiarity. Its creatures are not trying to be recognizable, cute, or marketable. They are the result of relentless natural selection, working with extreme constraints, carving bodies that solve very specific problems. And when the problems are extreme, The solutions tend to look extreme too. This is where the mystery truly hooks us. Every strange jaw, elongated limb, or ghostly outline raises a question. Not, what is that? But why did that work? Because in the deep sea, nothing exists without a reason. Energy is precious. Mistakes are expensive. Features that do not help survival quietly disappear over time. What remains are forms that may look bizarre to us, but make perfect sense within their own world. As we descend deeper into this story, each chapter will peel back one layer of that world, revealing how different challenges sculpt different kinds of creatures. Not randomly, not chaotically, but logically, elegantly, and sometimes hilariously. The deep sea is proof that life does not aim for beauty as we define it. It aims for persistence. And if persistence requires looking like a floating nightmare, then so be it. So take a breath, leave your expectations at the surface, and get comfortable with the idea that normal is a local concept. Down here, the ocean is about to show us just how flexible life can be when survival is the only aesthetic that matters. Sunlight is the quiet architect of surface life. It decides which colors matter, which shapes stand out, and which behaviors succeed. Near the ocean's surface, light pours down generously, scattering through the water and turning it into a stage where visibility drives everything. Colors are signals. Patterns are warnings. Speed and sharp vision become valuable currencies. If you can see well and be seen clearly, you can hunt, flee, flirt, or threaten with confidence. The sun, without saying a word, sets the rules. But as you descend through the water, sunlight begins to thin out like a rumor passed too many times. Reds vanish first, then oranges, then yellows, until the ocean becomes a muted world of blues and greys. Eventually, even that fades, and the sun's influence simply stops. Not dim, not low, gone. At that moment, the ocean undergoes one of the most dramatic environmental shifts on the planet. And when light disappears, it takes an entire design philosophy with it. At the surface, having good vision is like having insider information. Eyes are finely tuned to detect contrast, motion, and color because those details matter. But eyes are expensive organs. They require energy to grow, energy to maintain, and energy to process the information they collect. In a world with light, that investment pays off. In a world without it, the eyes become luxury items with no return policy. Evolution is very practical, and it does not tolerate unnecessary subscriptions. This is why deep-sea animals begin to abandon visual complexity. Not because eyes are bad, but because light is gone. There is no point in detecting color when color no longer exists. There is no advantage in crisp detail when the environment offers none. Over time, features tied to light-driven interaction simply lose their usefulness. And when usefulness disappears, so does the feature. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, generation by generation, until what remains is a body optimized for a darker reality. Color follows the same logic. Near the surface, bright colors shout messages. They warn predators, attract mates, or help animals blend into vibrant backgrounds. But color only works when light reflects off it. In total darkness, pigment is meaningless decoration. Evolution does not reward decoration for decoration's sake. So deep-sea animals often abandon vibrant hues altogether, shifting toward palettes that serve other purposes or none at all. The ocean floor is not a runway, and no one is getting judged on coordination. What replaces all of this is not chaos, but simplification. Forms become less about display and more about function. Smooth transitions replace sharp visual contrasts. Features that once existed to communicate visually are either removed or repurposed. This does not mean deep-sea animals are less sophisticated. In many ways, they are more refined, because every remaining trait has passed a ruthless cost-benefit analysis. If it does not help survival in the dark, it quietly exits the design. There is also a behavioral shift that comes with losing light. Surface animals rely heavily on visual awareness to navigate their environment, constantly reacting to what they see. In darkness, reaction based on sight is no longer an option. Instead of fast, visually guided decisions, deep-sea life favors patience and efficiency. Movements become deliberate. Energy is conserved. The absence of light encourages a slower, more calculated existence, where impulsive action is less valuable than endurance. This change in lighting conditions also reshapes how animals interact with one another. Without visibility, there is no benefit in flashy displays or visual intimidation. Presence is no longer announced through appearance, but through proximity. The ocean becomes less about what you look like and more about where you are. Life adapts by removing features that depend on being noticed and emphasizing those that work quietly in the background. What is fascinating is how cleanly this transformation happens. There is no halfway point where animals cling desperately to visual traits out of nostalgia. Evolution does not sentimentalize. Once light fades beyond usefulness, organisms adapt accordingly. The deep sea is filled with animals that are not incomplete versions of surface life, but alternative versions built for an entirely different operating system. Seen through this lens, the deep ocean is not a place where life becomes strange. It is a place where life becomes honest. Without light, there is no incentive for deception through appearance. No camouflage patterns meant to fool eyes. No bright warnings meant to intimidate. What remains are bodies shaped by a simple truth. If no one can see you, then looking impressive is a waste of time. In losing sunlight, deep-sea creatures gain something else entirely. Freedom from visual expectations. They do not need to resemble anything familiar to succeed. They only need to function. And in that pitch-black world, evolution finds solutions that may look odd to us, but make perfect sense when beauty is no longer measured in color, and vision is no longer king. If darkness is the deep ocean's mood, pressure is its personality. Relentless, silent, and completely uninterested in your comfort. As you descend through the water column, pressure increases steadily, stacking itself layer upon layer until the weight above you becomes almost impossible to imagine. Down near the ocean floor, every square inch of space is being squeezed by an invisible force that never takes a break. It does not slam into you. It leans, constantly, like the world's heaviest blanket, applied evenly from all directions. At the surface, animals are built in a world where pressure is relatively gentle and predictable. Air presses down on us, sure, but not enough to demand structural compromise. Rigid skeletons, air-filled spaces, and firm tissues work just fine. But take those same design principles and move them thousands of meters downward, and they turn into liabilities. Pressure does not tolerate empty space or stiff resistance. Anything that pushes back too hard tends to lose. This is why deep-sea bodies often look soft, flexible, and to be blunt, a little melted. It is not because these animals are weak or unfinished. It is because softness is a survival strategy. A body without rigid air-filled cavities gives pressure nothing to crush. When internal and external pressures match, there is no catastrophic collapse. The animal simply exists within the squeeze rather than fighting it. In the deep ocean, compliance beats strength every time. Bones and hard structures become carefully managed. Where surface animals rely on stiff frameworks to support movement and resist gravity, deep-sea organisms often reduce or modify those frameworks. Dense bone can be unnecessary weight. Hard shells can be risky. Pressure favors materials that bend rather than break, tissues that absorb force instead of opposing it. The result is anatomy that feels more like a stress ball than a suit of armor. This has profound effects on shape. Bodies become elongated, flattened, or loosely structured. Organs are arranged in ways that minimize stress. Fluids take on a larger role in maintaining form because liquids transmit pressure evenly and safely. It is the same reason submarines are carefully engineered with pressure-resistant designs, except deep-sea animals achieve this through biology rather than blueprints. There is also a chemical side to pressure that quietly influences form. High pressure affects how molecules behave, how proteins fold, and how reactions proceed. Deep-sea animals evolve internal chemistry that remains stable under intense compression. This influences everything from muscle texture to cellular structure, subtly shaping bodies in ways we can see on the outside. What looks like a floppy, underbuilt creature is actually a masterpiece of molecular stability. Movement under pressure also changes the game. Rapid, forceful motion requires rigid leverage, which pressure actively discourages. Instead, many deep-sea animals adopt slow, fluid movements that glide rather than thrust. Their bodies are built to flow through the water with minimal resistance, conserving energy while avoiding structural stress. Think less sprinting athlete, more drifting balloon with opinions. From our perspective, these animals can appear fragile, but this is an illusion born from surface conditions. Bring a deep-sea creature up too quickly, and the pressure difference alone can cause severe damage, not because the animal was poorly designed, but because it was perfectly designed for a world we cannot easily visit. In its natural environment, that soft body is not a weakness. It is a shield. Pressure also eliminates certain design options entirely. Gas-filled spaces, for example, are common at the surface, but disastrous at depth. Any pocket of compressible gas becomes a liability under intense pressure. Over evolutionary time, deep-sea animals quietly remove these vulnerabilities. What remains are bodies that are dense where necessary, flexible where possible, and utterly uninterested in maintaining rigid form for its own sake. There is something almost poetic about this adaptation. At extreme depths, survival does not come from resisting the environment, but from yielding to it. Deep-sea creatures do not push back against the ocean's weight. They accept it, distribute it, and move within it. Their forms reflect a philosophy of endurance rather than dominance. So when you see images of deep-sea animals that look saggy, gelatinous, or oddly proportioned, remember that you are looking at organisms shaped by one of the most unforgiving forces on the planet. Pressure does not reward elegance or stiffness. It rewards adaptability. And in that crushing darkness, softness is not a flaw. It is the reason anything survives at all. As you sink deeper into the ocean, darkness and pressure are not the only things waiting for you. The water also grows steadily colder until it settles into a near-freezing chill that barely changes year-round. This cold is not dramatic or flashy. It is constant, quiet, and deeply influential. Temperature, more than almost any other factor, dictates the speed of life. And in the deep sea, life operates in slow motion by necessity. At warmer temperatures, chemical reactions happen quickly. Muscles contract faster. Nerves fire more rapidly. Digestion, growth, and repair all proceed at a brisk pace. This is why many surface animals are energetic, reactive, and busy. Heat keeps the biological engine revving, but cold pulls the handbrake. In near-freezing water, chemistry slows down. Molecules move more sluggishly. Reactions that would happen instantly near the surface take much longer to complete. For deep-sea animals, this means their entire internal clock is set differently. Movement becomes slower, not because these creatures are lazy, but because speed is chemically expensive. Fast motion requires rapid muscle contractions, which demand quick biochemical reactions. In cold conditions, forcing speed would burn energy at a rate the environment simply cannot support. Evolution responds by dialing everything down. This slow pace shapes bodies in subtle but important ways. Muscles are built for endurance rather than bursts of power. Tissues prioritize efficiency over strength. Many deep-sea animals move with a deliberate, almost floating grace. Not because they lack urgency, but because urgency is a bad investment. In a world where resources are scarce and replacement energy is slow to arrive, wasting calories is the equivalent of financial ruin. The cold also affects how animals grow and develop. Processes that would rapidly produce new tissue in warmer environments take far longer at depth. As a result, deep-sea organisms often grow slowly and mature over extended periods. Their lives are not defined by rapid change, but by long-term stability. This is a world where patience is not a personality trait, but a biological requirement. Even behavior reflects this thermal reality. Instead of constant activity, deep-sea animals often remain still for long stretches of time. Stillness conserves energy and aligns perfectly with a slow metabolic rate. When movement does occur, it is purposeful. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is wasted. If the surface ocean is a bustling city, the deep sea is a quiet library where everyone whispers and no one runs. Cold temperatures also influence how animals handle stress and damage. Repair processes slow down, so injuries can be costly. This encourages strategies that minimize risk. Rather than engaging in frequent high-energy interactions, deep-sea animals tend to avoid unnecessary confrontation. And their bodies and behaviors reflect a preference for consistency over intensity. Survival is about lasting, not outperforming. There is a strange elegance to this thermal adaptation. The deep sea does not demand speed or aggression. It demands efficiency. And efficiency in cold water looks very different from efficiency in warmth. Features that support quick reactions become less important than those that reduce energy loss. The result is anatomy that favors insulation, stability, and slow function. From a human perspective, this can feel unsettling. We associate life with movement, with action, with visible effort. But in the deep ocean, life expresses itself through restraint. A creature drifting slowly through icy darkness is not failing to live fully. It is living exactly as much as the environment allows. And the cold also creates remarkable consistency. Unlike surface waters, which warm and cool with seasons and sunlight, the deep ocean remains cold all the time. This stability allows deep-sea animals to fine-tune their biology to a narrow temperature range. Their enzymes, membranes, and tissues are optimized for cold conditions, performing reliably where surface-adapted organisms would struggle or shut down entirely. This specialization comes at a cost, of course. Remove these animals from their cold environment, and their systems quickly lose balance. What works perfectly at near freezing temperatures becomes inefficient or unstable elsewhere. But in the deep sea, that specialization is a strength. It allows life to persist in a realm where warmth never arrives to offer a boost. So when deep sea creatures move slowly, it is not a sign of weakness or limitation. It is a visible expression of the physics and chemistry that govern their world. Cold water sets the tempo, and evolution composes a biology that moves in time with it. In the deep ocean, buffering is not a glitch. It is the optimal operating speed for survival. Food is the currency of survival. And in the deep sea, the economy is brutal. Unlike the surface, where energy flows in constantly from sunlight-driven systems, the deep ocean exists on leftovers. Nutrients drift downward slowly, unpredictably, and in small amounts. There are no daily guarantees, no steady buffets, just the occasional delivery from above, arriving whenever gravity feels like it. This scarcity shapes life more powerfully than almost any other factor, carving bodies designed to seize opportunity without hesitation. While in such an environment, missing a meal is not a minor inconvenience. It can be a serious setback, sometimes a fatal one. Deep-sea animals cannot rely on frequent feeding, so they evolve to take full advantage of rare encounters with food. When something edible appears, the response must be immediate and decisive. This pressure favors anatomy that maximizes success in the moment, even if it looks excessive by surface standards. This is where the oversized mouths come in. Many deep-sea animals possess jaws that seem wildly disproportionate to the rest of their bodies. From our perspective, they look comical or horrifying, like a creature that forgot to grow into its face. But that enormous mouth is a solution to a very specific problem. When food is scarce, being picky is a losing strategy. So a large mouth increases the range of potential prey and reduces the risk of losing a meal simply because it was slightly bigger than expected. Expandable stomachs follow the same logic. At the surface, frequent feeding allows animals to regulate intake and avoid overeating. In the deep sea, moderation is a luxury. When food appears, the safest strategy is to eat as much as possible, even if it takes weeks or months to process. Flexible stomachs allow animals to store energy internally, turning rare feasts into long-term survival plans. Think less dinner and more emergency savings account. Teeth also tell the story of scarcity. Deep-sea teeth are often long, sharp, and angled inward, designed to grip rather than chew. There is no need for refined processing when the primary goal is to prevent escape. Once food enters the mouth, it must not leave. These nightmare smiles are not about intimidation. They are about efficiency. Losing prey after capture is a mistake the deep sea does not forgive. This feeding strategy influences behavior as well. Rather than actively searching large areas for food, many deep-sea animals position themselves to intercept whatever drifts by. The emphasis is on readiness rather than pursuit. When an opportunity arises, anatomy does the work. A fast snap, a wide gape, a flexible interior, ready to handle whatever arrives. It is less about hunting skill and more about being prepared for randomness. Scarcity also removes the option of specialization for some species. At the surface, animals can afford to evolve narrow diets because food sources are abundant and predictable. In the deep sea, specialization can be risky. If your preferred food disappears for too long, you disappear with it. As a result, many deep-sea animals are opportunistic feeders, equipped to consume a wide variety of organic material. Their anatomy reflects this flexibility, favoring general-purpose designs that can handle surprise meals. There is a psychological shift here too, if we can use that word loosely. The deep sea does not reward restraint or delicacy. It rewards decisiveness. When an animal opens its mouth wide enough to swallow something nearly its own size, it is not being reckless. It is responding appropriately to an environment where hesitation equals failure. Every feeding event is a high-stakes encounter, and evolution ensures the odds are stacked in favor of the animal that commits fully. From a human point of view, these features can look grotesque. Oversized jaws, distended stomachs, and fang-filled mouths challenge our sense of proportion. But proportion is relative to environment. In a world where food is plentiful, excess looks wasteful. In a world where food is rare, excess is insurance. Scarcity also shapes the internal organization of these animals. Digestive systems are built to extract maximum value from each meal, processing slowly and thoroughly. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is discarded without reason. Every calorie counts, and biology reflects that accounting. So when you encounter a deep-sea creature with a mouth that seems far too big, remember that it is not overbuilt. It is perfectly calibrated for a world where opportunity is unpredictable and failure is unforgiving. In the deep ocean, you do not eat often, but when you do, you make absolutely sure it counts. When sunlight vanishes completely, darkness does not just arrive, it settles in and never leaves. In that permanent night, the deep sea faces a strange contradiction. Light is gone, yet light becomes more valuable than ever. This is where bioluminescence enters the story, turning the ocean into a place where living things manufacture their own glow. Not for decoration, but for survival. Bioluminescence is not accidental sparkle. It is a chemical process, carefully controlled, producing light through reactions inside the body. For deep-sea animals, this ability is one of the most versatile tools available. When the environment offers no illumination, generating your own becomes a way to regain control. But unlike sunlight, bioluminescent light is targeted, intentional, and used with purpose. As one of the most striking uses of bioluminescence is deception. Some animals produce light to lure prey, essentially advertising a false opportunity in the dark. A small glowing point can suggest food, safety, or curiosity, drawing in unsuspecting organisms that mistake the signal for something harmless. By the time the truth becomes apparent, it is usually far too late. In a place where food is rare, turning curiosity into calories is an efficient strategy. Light can also be used defensively. Sudden flashes or bursts of glow can startle predators, buying precious seconds to escape. In a dark environment, unexpected light is disorienting, like a camera flash in a pitch-black room. Some animals release glowing material into the water, creating a luminous distraction while they slip away unseen. It is the biological equivalent of throwing a glowing smoke bomb and quietly exiting the scene. Perhaps the most elegant use of bioluminescence is camouflage. This sounds counterintuitive, but in the deep sea, light from above can still exist in faint forms at certain depths. Animals swimming below that dim glow risk casting shadows, revealing their presence to predators lurking beneath them. By producing light on their undersides that matches the faint light above, some animals erase their silhouette. They do not hide by being dark, but by being just bright enough. It is camouflage through subtraction rather than concealment. Bioluminescence also enables communication in a world where sound and sight are limited. Different species produce distinct patterns, colors, or rhythms of light. These signals can identify individuals as signal readiness or establish boundaries. In the absence of daylight cues, light becomes a language, not loud, not constant, but precise. A brief flash can carry more meaning than a prolonged glow, conserving energy while still transmitting information. Energy conservation is critical here. Producing light costs energy, and deep-sea animals are careful about how they spend it. Bioluminescence is often activated only when needed. Some species can control the intensity, duration, and location of their glow with remarkable precision. Light is not left on accidentally. It is switched on for a reason, then shut down just as quickly. This precision gives bioluminescence a haunting beauty. Tiny flashes punctuate the darkness like stars, each one representing a deliberate action by a living organism. The deep sea is not glowing constantly. It flickers. It whispers in light. Each spark has meaning, even if we do not fully understand it. What makes bioluminescence especially fascinating is how widespread it is. It appears across many unrelated groups, suggesting that when faced with darkness, evolution repeatedly arrives at the same solution. If you cannot rely on the sun, become the sun. Or at least a small, controllable version of it. There is also an element of risk. Light reveals position as much as it communicates intent. Every glow is a trade-off between advantage and exposure. Deep-sea animals navigate this balance carefully, using light sparingly and strategically. In the deep ocean, being seen at the wrong moment can be fatal. Bioluminescence is powerful precisely because it is controlled. From our perspective, glowing animals feel magical, almost unreal. Yeah, but in their world, bioluminescence is simply another tool, no more mystical than eyesight at the surface. It fills the gap left by the absent sun, restoring some measure of interaction and awareness in a place that would otherwise be sensory isolation. So, in a realm where daylight never arrives, life responds by inventing its own illumination. The deep sea does not surrender to darkness. It negotiates with it, one flicker at a time. Eyes are among the most information-hungry organs in the animal kingdom. They demand constant energy, complex neural processing, and delicate maintenance. At the surface, this investment pays off handsomely. Vision guides movement, detects danger, and shapes nearly every interaction. But in the deep sea, where light is scarce or absent, eyes become a gamble. And evolution is ruthless with bad investments. Now, what emerges is an extreme split. Deep-sea animals tend to fall into one of two camps. Those that dramatically enhance their ability to capture even the faintest traces of light, and those that abandon vision altogether. There is very little middle ground, because mediocre eyesight in near total darkness is essentially useless. It is the biological equivalent of paying for high-speed internet in a cave. For animals that retain vision, the solution is not subtle improvement, but radical enhancement. Their eyes grow disproportionately large compared to their bodies, maximizing surface area for light capture. Larger eyes can gather more photons, increasing the chance of detecting faint glows in the darkness. These creatures are not trying to see detail. They are trying to see anything at all. Even a hint of movement or a brief flash can be enough to justify the cost of maintaining vision. These eyes are often positioned strategically, angled to scan specific regions of the water column. Placement matters as much as size. Some eyes look upward, tuned to detect silhouettes or faint light from above. Others face forward, optimized for spotting bioluminescent signals. Every aspect of eye structure reflects a compromise between limited light availability and the need for information. This is vision stripped down to its most essential function. On the other end of the spectrum are animals that give up on eyes entirely. In complete darkness, where no light ever penetrates, vision provides no advantage. In these environments, eyes become dead weight. They consume energy without offering usable data. Over time, as these animals evolve reduced eyes, or none at all. This is not a loss in the tragic sense. It is optimization. Resources once devoted to vision are redirected elsewhere. Losing eyes also reduces vulnerability. Eyes are sensitive organs, prone to damage. In a world where collisions and encounters happen in the dark, having fewer delicate structures can be beneficial. Removing eyes simplifies the body and eliminates a point of failure. Evolution does not cling to complexity for its own sake. What replaces vision in eyeless animals is not blindness, but reliance on other forms of awareness. Their perception of the world does not vanish. It shifts. Information arrives through different channels, allowing these animals to navigate, locate resources, and avoid danger without ever forming a visual image. From our perspective, this feels limiting. From theirs, it is perfectly adequate. The absence of intermediate eye forms makes sense when you consider cost versus benefit. A small, weak eye in deep darkness still requires energy to build and maintain, yet delivers almost no useful information. Natural selection removes these inefficient compromises over time. What remains are extremes that make sense. Either vision is powerful enough to matter, or it is not worth having at all. This stark divide highlights a broader truth about evolution. It does not aim for balance or moderation. It aims for functionality. Traits that deliver marginal benefit at high cost are unstable. They disappear. Traits that deliver strong benefit at acceptable cost persist. In the deep sea, this creates a visual landscape of giants and ghosts. Massive eyes staring into darkness, and smooth faces where eyes once might have been. There is something unsettling about eyeless animals to surface-dwelling humans. We equate eyes with awareness, intelligence, and presence. But this is our bias, shaped by a light-filled world. In the deep ocean, awareness takes different forms. Vision is just one option among many, not the default. At the same time, enormous eyes remind us of how precious information becomes when it is scarce. When light is rare, every photon matters. The animals that invest in vision are betting that even the smallest visual cue can tip the scales in their favor. It is a high-risk, high-reward strategy. So the deep sea teaches us a lesson in extremes. There is no room for half measures when conditions are harsh. Eyes are either transformed into powerful tools capable of working in near nothingness, or quietly removed from the equation. Evolution does not waste effort. It commits, or it cancels. If you were to sketch what you think an animal should look like, you would probably end up with something symmetrical, compact, and clearly defined. Heads at one end, tails at the other, limbs sized proportionally. The deep sea looks at that sketch, nods politely, and then throws it away. Down here, body shape is not about elegance or familiarity. It is about solving very specific physical problems with the least possible effort. One of the most noticeable features of many deep-sea animals is how elongated they are. Limbs stretch, bodies taper, and proportions feel exaggerated. This is not random distortion. Long, thin structures increase surface area without adding much mass. That extra surface area interacts with the water and helping animals remain suspended with minimal effort. In a world where swimming constantly would drain precious energy, the ability to hover or drift is a massive advantage. Jelly-like tissues serve a similar purpose. Dense muscle is powerful, but it is also heavy and metabolically expensive. Softer tissues, filled with fluid and low-density material, provide structure without demanding constant energy input. These bodies do not fight gravity or buoyancy. They cooperate with it. The result is an animal that can exist comfortably in the water column, moving only when necessary. From a surface perspective, these bodies look fragile, but fragility is misleading. Jelly-like does not mean weak. It means optimized for a fluid environment. These tissues distribute forces evenly, reducing strain and minimizing the effort needed to maintain form. What in the deep sea, durability is less about hardness and more about consistency. Transparency is another striking feature. Some deep-sea animals are so clear that their internal organs are visible, giving them an almost ghostly appearance. This is not an aesthetic choice. Transparency reduces visibility. Without pigmentation or strong outlines, these animals blend into the water itself. In darkness, contrast matters more than color. Removing contrast is an effective way to disappear. This strategy is particularly useful in an environment where hiding places are scarce. There are no coral reefs or seaweed forests at great depths. Open water dominates, leaving few places to take cover. Instead of hiding behind objects, animals hide by becoming harder to detect. Transparency turns the animal into background noise, visually speaking. As unusual shapes also help with feeding and sensing. Extended limbs can act like feelers, increasing the area an animal can monitor without moving its entire body. In a low-energy environment, reaching outward is cheaper than swimming forward. These limbs can detect changes in water movement or encounter drifting material, providing information without requiring constant motion. Some bodies are flattened, others oddly inflated, and some seem barely held together at all. Each shape reflects a different strategy for managing energy and attention. The deep sea rewards animals that minimize effort while maximizing awareness. Compact, muscular designs that work well at the surface are often too costly here. Efficiency demands creativity. There is also an important psychological effect for predators and prey. And strange shapes are harder to interpret quickly. At the surface, animals recognize familiar silhouettes and react accordingly. In the deep sea, unusual outlines disrupt that recognition. A predator may hesitate, unsure of what it is seeing. A moment of confusion can be enough to avoid detection or escape an encounter. Looking weird can be protective. These shapes also reflect a shift away from speed. Streamlined bodies built for fast swimming are less common because sustained speed is expensive. Instead, deep-sea animals favor shapes that reduce drag during slow movement or passive drifting. Their bodies are tuned for stillness as much as motion. What ties all of this together is the idea that form follows physics more strictly in the deep sea than almost anywhere else. Without abundant energy to compensate for inefficiency, her body shape becomes a direct response to environmental forces. Long limbs, soft tissues, and transparency are not quirks. They are the most cost-effective answers to a difficult equation. To us, these animals can feel unsettling, like living sketches that were never finalized. but that impression comes from expecting surface logic in a place governed by different rules. In the deep ocean, the best body is not the strongest or the fastest. It is the one that uses the least energy while staying alive. So when you see a deep sea creature that looks like it might gently fall apart if you sneeze near it, remember this: it is not poorly designed. It is exquisitely tuned to a world where effort is expensive, attention is dangerous, and blending in can be the difference between existing and becoming someone else's lunch. So size is one of the most obvious traits we notice in animals, and in the deep sea, size stops making polite sense. Some creatures loom far larger than their surface relatives, while others shrink to proportions that feel almost theoretical. This dramatic split is not random exaggeration. It is the result of life negotiating scarcity, risk, and opportunity in an environment where energy arrives infrequently and unpredictably. Let us start with the giants. In the deep sea, being large can offer several subtle advantages. A bigger body can store more energy, acting as a living reservoir that smooths out long gaps between meals. When food is rare and unreliable, having the capacity to hold on to nutrients becomes a form of insurance. Large size also reduces the number of potential predators, and simply because fewer organisms are capable of attacking something much bigger than themselves. In the deep ocean, intimidation does not require aggression. Sometimes it just requires mass. Large bodies also change how animals interact with their environment. A bigger organism can move through the water with greater inertia, maintaining momentum with less effort. Once in motion, it can drift efficiently, conserving energy. Size can also stabilize body temperature and internal conditions, reducing the impact of small environmental fluctuations. In a place where conditions are extreme but consistent, stability matters. However, gigantism is not about speed or dominance. It is about persistence. Large deep-sea animals are not built to chase prey or fight rivals. They are built to endure. Their size allows them to operate on long timelines. They are turning rare feeding events into extended survival. When you cannot rely on frequent meals, being able to stretch one opportunity as far as possible is a powerful advantage. On the opposite end of the spectrum are the tiny specialists. Dwarfism in the deep sea is just as strategic. Small bodies require less energy to maintain. They grow faster, reproduce with fewer resources, and can survive on minimal intake. For these animals, scarcity is addressed not by storing energy, but by needing very little of it in the first place. When food arrives in small quantities, being small enough to make use of it is a winning strategy. Tiny size also allows animals to exploit niches that larger organisms cannot. Microscopic or near-microscopic creatures can survive on particles and traces of organic material that would be useless to larger animals. In the deep sea, nothing goes to waste. Even the smallest scraps become valuable resources, and tiny bodies are perfectly suited to capitalize on them. This size split reflects two different philosophies of survival. One says, when food appears, take as much as possible and make it last. The other says, live lightly enough that even little is enough. Both approaches work, but they lead to dramatically different bodies. What is notably absent is the middle ground. Medium-sized animals often face the worst of both worlds. They require more energy than tiny organisms, but lack the storage capacity of giants. In a resource-poor environment, that is a risky position. Over time, evolution pushes species toward extremes where the balance of cost and benefit is more favorable. Size also influences life history. While larger animals tend to develop slowly and live longer, while smaller ones cycle through generations more quickly. Both strategies can succeed in the deep sea because the environment is stable but unforgiving. Long-lived giants ride out long periods of scarcity, while fast-reproducing small species adapt quickly to subtle changes. From a human perspective, deep-sea gigantism often feels eerie. Creatures that are far larger than expected seem to violate our sense of natural order. But that reaction is shaped by surface ecosystems, where energy flows freely and size is constrained by competition and abundance. In the deep sea, the rules are different. Size is not about competition. It is about efficiency over time. Dwarfism, too, challenges our expectations. Tiny animals are easy to overlook, but they form the backbone of deep-sea ecosystems. Their ability to survive on minimal resources makes them incredibly resilient. They are the quiet accountants of the deep ocean, ensuring that no energy goes unused. Together, these extremes illustrate how life responds to limitation. When resources are scarce, evolution does not settle for compromise. It commits. It builds giants that endure and miniatures that persist. In the deep sea, size is not about being impressive. It is about being viable. And viability comes in very large and very small packages. When sight becomes unreliable or disappears entirely, the deep sea does not leave its inhabitants unaware. Instead, it redirects perception through other channels, building sensory systems that feel almost paranoid by human standards. In a world where you cannot see what is coming, and knowing that something is there becomes more important than knowing what it looks like. The result is a suite of senses that prioritize detection over detail. Touch becomes a primary source of information. Many deep-sea animals are equipped with elongated appendages, sensitive skin, or hair-like structures that respond to the slightest contact with water movement. These features act as early warning systems, detecting disturbances caused by nearby organisms. The water itself becomes a medium of communication, carrying information through pressure changes and motion. To these animals, the ocean is never truly still. It is constantly whispering. Smell, or more accurately chemical detection, plays an equally crucial role. In the deep sea, chemicals disperse slowly, lingering in the water long enough to form detectable trails. While animals capable of sensing these traces can locate food, identify other organisms, or recognize potential threats from a distance. This form of awareness does not require proximity or visibility. It relies on patience and sensitivity, qualities well suited to a low-energy environment. Vibration detection adds another layer. Movements in the water generate waves that travel outward, carrying information about size, speed, and direction. Deep-sea animals that can interpret these vibrations gain a rough map of their surroundings without ever seeing them. This sense is less about identifying objects and more about understanding activity. Something moved. Something large passed by. Something changed. In the deep sea, change is worth paying attention to. Electrical sensing takes this awareness even further. All living organisms generate small electrical fields through muscle movement and nerve activity. Some deep-sea animals can detect these fields, allowing them to sense the presence of other organisms, even in complete darkness and still water. This ability bypasses the need for light, motion, or chemical cues. It is a direct line to detecting life itself. Together, these senses create a picture of the environment that is fragmented but reliable. Instead of a visual scene, deep-sea animals experience a constant stream of signals. A faint chemical trace here, a pressure change there, a subtle vibration passing through the water. None of these cues provides a complete image on its own, but together they form a functional understanding of what is happening nearby. This sensory strategy influences behavior profoundly. The deep-sea animals tend to be cautious, not because they are timid, but because their perception favors early detection over immediate reaction. When you can sense something long before it arrives, there is no need to rush. Awareness replaces speed. Anticipation replaces pursuit. From a human perspective, this feels unsettling. We trust our eyes. We are comfortable reacting to what we can see. The deep-sea approach feels like constant vigilance, as if the environment itself cannot be trusted. But in darkness, vigilance is survival. Every movement, every signal, is a potential event. These sensory systems also reduce the need for frequent movement. By extending perception outward, animals can gather information without changing position. This conserves energy and minimizes risk. Why swim blindly into danger when you can let the ocean tell you what is happening from afar? What is remarkable is how specialized these senses become. Sensitivity increases dramatically, allowing detection of signals that would go unnoticed at the surface. Deep-sea animals are not overwhelmed by this information because their world is relatively quiet. When a signal appears, it matters. Noise is minimal. Signal-to-noise ratios are high. This reliance on non-visual senses also shapes interactions between animals. Encounters are often anticipated rather than sudden. Contact rarely comes as a surprise. By the time two organisms meet, they have often been aware of each other's presence for some time. This changes the dynamics of feeding, avoidance, and coexistence. So while deep-sea animals may seem blind or disconnected to us, they are anything but unaware. They experience their environment through a rich network of sensory inputs that operate continuously in the background. Their world is not empty or silent. It is full of subtle information, constantly flowing. In the absence of light, perception does not disappear. It evolves. Touch, smell, vibration, and electrical signals become the primary language of survival. And in that language, the deep sea speaks clearly to those who have learned how to listen. Reproduction is challenging in any environment, but in the deep sea, it borders on absurd. Individuals are spread across vast volumes of water. Visibility is minimal, and encounters with others of the same species can be rare events separated by long stretches of isolation. In this setting, waiting for the perfect romantic moment is not just impractical, while it is dangerous. Evolution responds by rewriting the rules of reproduction in ways that feel extreme, even by deep-sea standards. One of the core problems is distance. At the surface, animals often live in dense populations, increasing the odds of encountering a mate. In the deep sea, space is enormous, and individuals may drift for long periods without crossing paths. This makes traditional courtship strategies inefficient. When encounters are rare, missing an opportunity can mean never reproducing at all. The deep sea does not reward hesitation. Some species solve this by turning reproduction into a permanent arrangement. Instead of meeting, mating, and parting ways, individuals physically merge. Once contact is made, the connection becomes lasting, ensuring reproductive access for the remainder of their lives. Whilst this eliminates the need for repeated encounters and guarantees that when conditions are right, reproduction can occur. It is less romance and more long-term contract, but in the deep sea, reliability beats passion. Other species rely on light to bridge the distance. Bioluminescent signals become beacons in the dark, advertising presence and readiness. These glows are not random or constant. They are carefully timed and patterned, reducing wasted energy while increasing the chances of being noticed by the right individual. In an environment where seeing another of your kind is rare, light becomes a long-distance announcement. I am here, and I am compatible. Opportunistic reproduction is another common strategy. Rather than breeding on a strict schedule or waiting for ideal conditions, deep-sea animals often reproduce whenever the opportunity arises. This flexibility is crucial in an environment where predictability is low. If a mate appears, the moment is seized. There may not be a second chance. This approach influences physiology as well. Many deep-sea animals maintain reproductive readiness for extended periods, rather than cycling rapidly through fertile and infertile phases. This ensures that when an encounter happens, reproduction is possible immediately. Waiting to prepare would introduce unnecessary risk. There is also a shift in investment. Producing offspring is costly, and in a resource-poor environment, efficiency matters. Some species produce fewer offspring, with higher chances of survival, while others release many, accepting that only a small fraction will persist. Both strategies can succeed, yet depending on how they align with the species' broader survival approach. Reproductive behavior in the deep sea often appears unromantic by human standards. There is little display, little choice, and little ceremony. But this is not because these animals are unsophisticated. It is because their environment does not allow for excess. Reproduction is treated as a critical task, not a social ritual. These strategies also reduce the energy spent searching. By increasing the likelihood that any encounter leads to reproduction, animals minimize wasted effort. In the deep sea, efficiency is survival, and reproduction is no exception. From our perspective, some of these strategies can feel unsettling. Permanent attachment, sudden reproduction, or glowing signals in the dark challenge our assumptions about mating. But these are solutions shaped by distance, darkness, and scarcity. They work because they have to. What ties all of this together is urgency. The deep sea is not a place where individuals can rely on frequent social interaction. Each encounter matters. Reproductive strategies evolve to make those encounters count, regardless of how strange they may appear. In a world where neighbors are few and far between, reproduction becomes less about choice and more about opportunity. The deep sea does not offer second dates. It offers brief moments of alignment in an otherwise vast and empty space. And life, as always, adapts to make the most of them. At the surface, camouflage is flashy in its own way. Stripes, spots, disruptive patterns, and clever color matching help animals blend into coral reefs, kelp forests, and sunlit water. But all of that depends on light reflecting off surfaces in predictable ways. In the deep sea, light is no longer abundant or consistent enough for those tricks to work. Instead of hiding by matching the background, deep-sea animals hide by erasing themselves from perception altogether. This begins with transparency. When there is no colourful environment to blend into, becoming see-through is one of the most effective ways to avoid detection. A transparent body allows light to pass through, rather than bounce back to an observer. With no strong outline and minimal contrast, the animal effectively dissolves into the water. It is not pretending to be something else. It is pretending to be nothing. Transparency is especially useful in open water, where there are no objects to hide behind. In these vast spaces, visibility depends on contrast. Anything that interrupts the uniformity of the water risks being noticed. By removing pigmentation and minimizing reflective surfaces, transparent animals reduce the visual cues predators rely on. Even internal organs may be rearranged or minimized to reduce shadows, showing how far this strategy can go. Jet black skin represents the opposite approach, but with the same goal. Instead of letting light pass through, some deep-sea animals absorb nearly all of it. This is not ordinary darkness. These surfaces trap incoming light so effectively that almost nothing reflects back. In a world where bioluminescent flashes are often the only sources of illumination, reflecting light can be fatal. Absorbing it makes the animal vanish the moment it is illuminated. This kind of blackness is not about blending in with a dark background. It is about refusing to announce your presence. When a predator emits or encounters light, a reflective surface would give you away instantly. A light-absorbing surface simply swallows the glow, leaving nothing for the predator's senses to latch onto. It is stealth built at the microscopic level. What makes this even more impressive is that these surfaces are not passive. They are structured to scatter and trap light internally, preventing it from escaping. This is camouflage engineered down to the physics of reflection. The deep sea turns invisibility into a material property. Camouflage without color also reduces the need for constant behavioral adjustment. At the surface, animals often have to position themselves carefully relative to light sources and backgrounds. In the deep sea, effective camouflage works regardless of orientation. Whether drifting, resting, or slowly moving, the animal remains difficult to detect. This consistency saves energy and reduces risk. There is also a psychological aspect to this invisibility. Predators rely on expectations. They look for shapes, edges, and movement. By eliminating clear outlines, deep-sea animals exploit those expectations. Even if a predator senses something nearby, it may struggle to visually confirm it. That hesitation can be enough to avoid an attack or allow the prey to drift away unnoticed. Camouflage in the deep sea is not about trickery. It is about minimizing interaction. Instead of signaling danger or deception, these animals aim to avoid being part of the visual equation at all. In a low-energy environment, avoiding conflict is often safer than winning it. This strategy also influences how animals move. And sudden motion creates contrast and draws attention, even in darkness. Camouflaged deep-sea animals tend to move slowly and smoothly, maintaining their invisibility by avoiding disturbances that could give them away. Stillness becomes an extension of camouflage. From a human perspective, this kind of stealth feels eerie. Creatures that are transparent or impossibly black seem to exist halfway between presence and absence. But that reaction highlights how unfamiliar this environment is to us. In the deep sea, visibility is a liability. The best defense is to remove yourself from view entirely. What unites transparency and light-absorbing darkness is efficiency. Both strategies eliminate the need for complex patterns, bright displays, or constant adjustment. They work quietly, continuously, and reliably. And in a place where energy is precious and danger is constant, that reliability is invaluable. So while surface camouflage plays with color and pattern, deep-sea camouflage rewrites the concept entirely. It is not about matching the environment. It is about becoming invisible within it. In the deep ocean, survival often belongs to those who master the art of not being seen at all. There is a common reaction people have when they first see deep-sea animals. Confusion. Not fear, not even disgust, but a quiet sense that something is missing. The bodies look asymmetrical. The proportions feel off. Features appear oversized, undersized, or oddly placed, like nature stopped halfway through the design and said, "Good enough." And in a way, that instinct is correct. In the deep sea, good enough is not an insult. It is a survival strategy. As at the surface, evolution has room to polish. Abundant energy allows for refinement, redundancy, and features that serve multiple roles at once. A fin can be sleek and strong. A body can be streamlined and expressive. But deep-sea evolution works under tight constraints. Energy is limited, encounters are rare, and mistakes are costly. Under those conditions, natural selection becomes brutally pragmatic. If a feature works, it stays. If it does not directly contribute to survival or reproduction, it quietly disappears. This is why many deep-sea animals look like collections of necessities rather than cohesive designs. Their bodies are built from essential parts, with little concern for symmetry or elegance. There is no evolutionary reward for looking complete. There is only reward for functioning reliably with minimal cost. That a structure that performs its job adequately does not need to be improved, especially if improvement requires additional energy. This leads to animals that appear improvised, as if assembled from whatever parts were available. A mouth that works does not need to align neatly with the rest of the face. A limb that senses the environment does not need to match its counterpart perfectly. The deep sea does not grade on presentation. It grades on persistence. Minimal energy budgets also discourage redundancy. At the surface, having backup systems can be useful. In the deep sea, backups are expensive. Many animals operate with just enough anatomy to meet their needs. This can result in bodies that look sparse or incomplete, but are in fact finely tuned to their environment. Yet removing excess reduces maintenance costs and lowers the baseline energy required to stay alive. This stripped-down approach also affects growth patterns. Rather than growing evenly across the body, deep-sea animals often prioritize certain features while leaving others underdeveloped. If one structure provides the majority of survival benefit, it receives the resources. Everything else gets what is left. The result can look lopsided or awkward, but the logic is sound. From a human design perspective, this feels unsettling because we associate form with intention. We expect organisms to look finished, balanced, and purposeful in ways that mirror our own aesthetic values. But evolution does not share those values. It is not trying to impress an audience. It is trying to solve problems with limited resources. There is also a time factor. Deep-sea environments are relatively stable over long periods, which reduces the pressure to constantly refine appearance. Once a functional solution emerges, it can persist for millions of years without significant visual change. There is no incentive to smooth edges or refine shapes if the current version works well enough. These animals are not frozen in time because they are incapable of change. They are stable because change is unnecessary. Evolution does not chase improvement for its own sake. It responds to pressure. In the deep sea, pressure favors reliability over refinement. The unfinished look can also result from features being exaggerated in isolation. When one trait becomes extremely important, it can dominate the body plan. Everything else becomes secondary. This can make animals look like a single idea stretched into physical form, rather than a balanced whole. But that single idea is often the key to survival. There is something deeply honest about this kind of biology. Without surplus energy, there is no room for vanity. Every structure must justify its existence. Deep-sea animals are living proof that functionality does not require beauty, and that efficiency does not always look elegant. To us, these creatures can feel unsettling because they challenge our assumptions about what life should look like. But that discomfort comes from expecting surface world standards in a place that plays by different rules. The deep sea does not reward polish. It rewards persistence. So when a deep sea animal looks like it was assembled in a hurry, I'll remember that it represents millions of years of refinement under constraint. It is not unfinished. It is complete in the only way that matters down there. It works. At the surface, movement is confidence. Animals dart, chase, flee, and compete in a constant blur of motion. Speed solves problems quickly. In the deep sea, speed creates problems. Every burst of movement costs energy, and energy is the one resource that cannot be wasted. So instead of turning life into a race, the deep ocean turns it into a waiting game, and the animals that master patience thrive. Ambush predation is the natural outcome of this environment. Rather than actively searching for prey, many deep-sea predators position themselves and wait. They choose locations where encounters are likely and let time do the work. Motion is minimized. Muscles rest. The predator becomes part of the environment, just another shape in the darkness. When prey finally arrives, the response is brief, precise, and over quickly. This strategy flips our usual understanding of hunting. At the surface, predators often succeed through pursuit and endurance. In the deep sea, pursuit is a gamble with terrible odds. Chasing something through open water risks burning more energy than the meal could ever provide. Ambush avoids that risk entirely. One well-timed action can be enough to secure survival for an extended period. Slow movement also reduces detection. Motion creates disturbance, and disturbance carries information. By remaining still, ambush predators minimize the signals they send into the water. This makes them harder to notice and easier to ignore. Prey passes by unaware, mistaking stillness for safety. What in the deep sea, stillness is often the most dangerous posture of all. Patience reshapes behavior in profound ways. Deep sea predators are not reactive in the way surface predators are. They do not constantly adjust or reposition. Instead, they rely on timing. They wait for conditions to align. This requires a biological tolerance for inactivity that feels unnatural to us. But in an environment where nothing happens quickly, waiting is not wasted time. It is strategy. This patience also influences anatomy. Bodies are built to support long periods of inactivity without deterioration. Structures that would fatigue quickly under constant use are unnecessary. What matters is the ability to remain ready. Muscles are poised rather than pumped. Joints are positioned for sudden action after long stillness. Thus, the entire body is designed around the idea that movement is rare but decisive. There is also an element of trust in the environment. Ambush predators trust that something will eventually come to them. They do not chase the ocean. They let the ocean deliver. This trust is not optimism. It is calculation. In a vast, drifting ecosystem, encounters are inevitable given enough time. Patience becomes a form of confidence. From a human perspective, this lifestyle feels passive, even boring. But that reaction comes from our own high-energy context. In the deep sea, constant activity would be reckless. Survival belongs to those who can endure long stretches of nothing without panicking or acting unnecessarily. Doing nothing becomes an active choice. Slow movement is not limited to predators. Many deep-sea animals, whether hunting or avoiding being hunted, move sparingly. Every action is weighed against its cost. This creates an ecosystem that feels calm and eerie, where life unfolds at a glacial pace. Sudden motion stands out precisely because it is rare. When ambush predators do move, the contrast is striking. The action is quick, efficient, and final. There is no prolonged struggle. Energy expenditure is tightly controlled. The goal is not dominance, but success with minimal effort. This approach also reduces injury risk. Chasing prey increases the chances of collision or overexertion. Ambush minimizes these dangers by limiting exposure. The predator engages only when conditions are favorable. This caution aligns perfectly with an environment where recovery from injury can be slow and costly. And the deep sea teaches a counterintuitive lesson. Activity is not always strength. Sometimes strength is restraint. In a world defined by scarcity, patience becomes a competitive advantage. Those who can wait longest, move least, and act only when necessary are the ones who persist. So when you imagine deep-sea predators, do not picture relentless pursuit. Picture stillness. Picture time stretching out. Picture an ocean where survival depends not on how fast you move, but on how well you can wait. In the deep sea, open conflict is a bad idea. Chasing, wrestling, or overpowering another organism requires energy, speed, and endurance. 3 things the deep ocean is notoriously stingy with. This forces life to find alternatives. Instead of muscles and momentum, many deep-sea animals rely on chemistry. Not dramatic chemistry with explosions and color changes, but quiet, invisible chemistry that works efficiently and without warning. Chemical warfare in the deep sea is about control. Venoms and toxins allow animals to influence the outcome of an encounter almost instantly, without extended effort. A carefully delivered chemical signal can shut down nerves, disrupt muscles, or interfere with basic biological functions. The interaction ends quickly, and the animal using the toxin avoids injury and exhaustion. In a world where recovery is slow and mistakes are expensive, that efficiency is priceless. Venom is most often associated with hunting. Rather than subduing prey through strength, venomous predators rely on precision. One bite, sting, or contact can be enough to immobilize a target. There is no prolonged struggle, and no frantic movement, no energy wasted. The prey stops responding, and the predator proceeds calmly. It is not about dominance. It is about minimizing risk. Poisonous tissues serve a different but equally important purpose. Instead of being a weapon, they act as a warning. Animals with toxic bodies make themselves dangerous to eat. Predators that ignore that warning pay the price, often learning very quickly which shapes or textures to avoid. Over time, this reduces the need for active defense. The animal does not need to fight. Its chemistry speaks on its behalf. These chemical defenses are especially effective in the deep sea because encounters are rare and memorable. A single bad experience can permanently alter a predator's behavior. When food is scarce, no predator wants to risk wasting energy on a meal that could be lethal. Chemical deterrents turn potential attacks into avoided interactions, saving energy on both sides. What makes this strategy so well suited to the deep sea is its subtlety. Chemical signals do not create noise, turbulence, or visual cues. They do not announce their presence. This reduces the chance of attracting additional predators or competitors. The interaction remains contained, private, and efficient. In a quiet environment, that matters. Producing toxins does require energy, but it is a one-time investment with long-term benefits. Once a chemical defense is established, it can be reused repeatedly without significant additional cost. This contrasts sharply with physical defenses, which require constant maintenance and repair. Chemistry offers durability without bulk. Chemical warfare also allows animals to remain relatively passive. As a toxic organism does not need to flee quickly or actively defend itself. It can afford to be slow, still, or even vulnerable looking, This aligns perfectly with the deep sea's broader emphasis on low-energy lifestyles. Letting others make the mistake of contact is often safer than trying to avoid every encounter. There is also an element of unpredictability. In darkness, visual assessment is limited. Predators cannot always tell which prey is safe and which is toxic. This uncertainty adds power to chemical defenses. Even non-toxic species may benefit from resemblance, creating a landscape where caution is the default. From a human perspective, chemical warfare feels sneaky, almost unfair. We are conditioned to recognize power in visible actions: speed, strength, aggression. Chemistry operates quietly, behind the scenes. But in the deep sea, quiet solutions are often the best ones. Survival does not care about spectacle. These toxins also shape community dynamics. Interactions become more cautious. Animals probe their environment carefully, responding to subtle cues rather than rushing in. The result is an ecosystem where conflict is minimized, not because danger is absent, but because it is everywhere and invisible. Chemical warfare reveals a fundamental truth about deep-sea life. When energy is limited, efficiency becomes the highest form of strength. A molecule that disables or deters can replace claws, teeth, and speed. In the deep ocean, violence does not roar. It whispers, and that whisper is often enough. Deep in the ocean, along cracks in the planet's crust, the seafloor does something unexpected. It leaks energy, not in the form of light or warmth that spreads gently, but as jets of superheated, mineral-rich water blasting into the cold abyss. These are hydrothermal vents, and around them exists one of the strangest ecosystems on Earth. In a world otherwise defined by scarcity, vents create pockets of abundance, powered not by the sun, but by the planet itself. Life near hydrothermal vents does not follow the familiar rules of surface ecosystems. There is no reliance on sunlight to drive energy production. Instead, organisms tap into chemical reactions made possible by compounds emerging from deep within the Earth. These chemicals provide the foundation for food webs that feel almost upside down compared to what we know. Rather than plants feeding animals, chemistry feeds life directly. This fundamental difference reshapes everything, starting with appearance. Vent-dwelling animals often look bizarre because their bodies are built around housing, supporting, or partnering with chemical processes. Some organisms form close relationships with microbes that convert chemical energy into usable nutrients. These microbes live inside their tissues, effectively turning the animal into a walking power station. When your body doubles as an energy plant, conventional anatomy becomes optional. Because energy is locally abundant near vents, these animals can afford features that would be unsustainable elsewhere in the deep sea. Growth can be faster. Bodies can be larger or more complex. Structures that support symbiotic relationships become prominent, even if they look strange by surface standards. These animals are not overbuilt. They are capitalizing on a rare energy surplus. The environment around vents is also extreme in other ways. Temperatures can vary dramatically over short distances, creating sharp gradients between scalding water and near-freezing surroundings. Animals living here must be positioned precisely, close enough to access chemical energy, but far enough to avoid lethal heat. This tight balance influences body shape and behavior, favoring forms that can anchor themselves and maintain stable positioning. Vent ecosystems are also spatially limited. They exist as isolated islands of energy on the seafloor. This isolation encourages specialization. Species evolve traits tailored specifically to vent conditions, resulting in forms that look unlike anything found elsewhere. When you adapt to a very narrow niche, general-purpose designs no longer make sense. In the absence of sunlight, also removes visual cues that dominate surface ecosystems. Color and pattern play little role in vent environments. Instead, structure and function take priority. Features that support chemical processing, protection from heat, or attachment to vent structures become more important than aesthetics. The result is life that appears industrial, as if built to operate machinery rather than impress an observer. There is something almost poetic about these ecosystems. They reveal that life does not need the sun to exist. It needs energy, and energy can come from unexpected places. Hydrothermal vents demonstrate that biology is not limited to one power source. When chemistry is available, life will find a way to use it. These vent communities also challenge our sense of normalcy. They show that the strange appearance of deep-sea animals is not always about coping with scarcity. Sometimes it is about exploiting abundance that exists only briefly and locally. In these pockets, evolution can experiment, producing bodies that reflect opportunity rather than limitation. From a broader perspective, hydrothermal vents expand our understanding of where life can exist. They suggest that environments once thought uninhabitable may, under the right conditions, support thriving ecosystems. This has implications far beyond Earth, hinting at the possibility of life in dark, energy-rich environments elsewhere. But within the deep sea itself, vent life remains an exception. These creatures stand out because they are not playing the same survival game as their neighbors. While most deep-sea animals are shaped by scarcity, vent organisms are shaped by access to Earth's internal energy. Their strange forms are signatures of that difference. So when you encounter images of vent-dwelling animals that look particularly alien, remember that you are seeing life powered from below, not above. These organisms are not running on sunlight delayed by gravity. They are running on the planet's own chemistry. In the deep ocean, that makes all the difference. Time behaves differently in the deep sea. Not physically, of course, but biologically. While surface life often unfolds at a fast pace, marked by rapid growth, early reproduction, and comparatively short lifespans, the deep ocean encourages patience on a completely different scale. Some deep-sea animals live for decades, centuries, or even longer, quietly existing through spans of time that feel almost geological to us. Longevity in the deep sea is not a luxury, it is a strategy. When resources are scarce and reproduction opportunities are unpredictable, living longer increases the chances of encountering favorable conditions. Instead of racing to reproduce quickly, many deep-sea animals invest in endurance. A long life spreads risk over time, smoothing out periods of scarcity and uncertainty. Slow aging is closely tied to the environment's stability. The deep sea experiences little seasonal change. Temperatures remain constant. Conditions shift gradually, rather than abruptly. This consistency reduces stress on biological systems, allowing bodies to operate under steady parameters for long periods. Without frequent environmental shocks, there is less pressure for rapid turnover. Some metabolism plays a central role here. Deep-sea animals often operate at low metabolic rates, meaning their internal processes run slowly and efficiently. Lower metabolic activity reduces the accumulation of cellular damage over time. In simple terms, their biological machinery wears out more slowly. Aging becomes a drawn-out process rather than a rapid decline. This slow pace influences development as well. Many deep-sea animals take years to reach maturity. Growth is gradual, carefully paced to match available resources. This delayed development may seem inefficient, but it aligns perfectly with a long-term survival strategy. By spreading growth over time, these animals avoid the risks associated with rapid energy demands. Longevity also changes how these animals interact with their environment. With long lifespans, there is less urgency to take risks. Survival becomes a marathon, not a sprint. Cautious behavior, energy conservation, and avoidance of unnecessary danger all support the goal of lasting as long as possible. From a human perspective, this kind of lifespan feels almost unfair. We live fast, burn bright, and worry about aging almost immediately. Deep-sea animals take a different approach. They age quietly, gradually, and with little drama. Their bodies are not built for peak performance followed by decline. They are built for consistency. There is also an evolutionary payoff to longevity in sparse environments. When populations are spread out and reproduction is infrequent, long-lived individuals help maintain genetic continuity. They serve as anchors within the ecosystem, persisting through long stretches of unfavorable conditions. Longevity becomes a stabilizing force. Slow aging does not mean these animals are immune to damage. Injuries and stress still matter, but recovery and maintenance are approached with the same patience that defines their lives. Repair processes are steady rather than rushed. The goal is not quick recovery, but reliable recovery. The deep sea's emphasis on longevity highlights a different definition of success. At the surface, success often looks like rapid growth, early reproduction, and dominance. In the deep ocean, success looks like persistence. Being there tomorrow matters more than outperforming today. This long-lived approach also contributes to the deep sea's sense of timelessness. When individuals live for generations by surface standards, change happens slowly. Ecosystems feel ancient, not because they are frozen, but because their rhythms are extended. So when we talk about deep-sea animals aging gracefully, it is not just a poetic phrase. It reflects a biological reality shaped by scarcity, stability, and patience. In the deep ocean, life does not rush toward an end. It stretches itself across time, quietly proving that longevity can be just as powerful as speed. The deep sea is not just dark and vast. It is fragmented, broken into pockets, valleys, slopes, plains, and trenches that rarely interact. To us, the ocean looks continuous, like one giant connected space. To deep-sea life, it is more like a scattered archipelago, where populations can be separated by distance, depth, or subtle environmental barriers for thousands or even millions of years. And when life is isolated long enough, it starts getting creative. Isolation changes evolution in quiet but powerful ways. When a population becomes cut off from others of its kind, it stops sharing genetic information. No newcomers arrive to mix things up. No competitors arrive to challenge existing strategies. The population is left alone with its environment, forced to solve problems independently. Over time, small differences accumulate. Then, bigger ones. Eventually, the creatures no longer resemble their ancestors in any familiar way. This process is amplified in the deep sea because many niches are extremely specific. One population may occupy a narrow depth range along a slope. Another may live only on a particular type of seafloor. Another may exist solely within a single basin. Each of these environments presents a slightly different set of challenges, and without competition from outsiders, evolution is free to explore unusual solutions. At the surface, ecosystems are crowded. Many species compete for the same resources, which tends to push evolution toward broadly effective, recognizable designs. In the deep sea, competition can be surprisingly low. When you are the only species occupying a niche, you do not need to conform. You only need to function. That freedom opens the door to strange adaptations that would never survive in a more competitive environment. Isolation also allows traits that would normally be outcompeted to persist. In a crowded ecosystem, an odd or inefficient feature is quickly eliminated. In isolation, there is no immediate penalty. As long as the trait does not prevent survival, it can remain. Over time, those traits can become exaggerated, refined, or combined with others, producing animals that look wildly unconventional. This is where the deep sea earns its reputation as an evolutionary art studio. Without external pressure to conform, evolution experiments. Bodies stretch, compress, simplify, or elaborate in ways that feel almost whimsical. It is not that evolution becomes random, it becomes permissive. It allows forms to exist that would be impossible elsewhere. Small populations play a role too. Isolated groups are often small, which makes evolutionary change happen faster. When only a few individuals contribute to the next generation, unusual traits can spread quickly. What might be a rare oddity in a large population can become the norm in a small one. Over long periods, this amplifies difference. Isolation also encourages specialization. When an organism adapts to a very narrow set of conditions, while it can afford to ignore everything else, general-purpose designs lose their advantage. Highly specific solutions take over. This leads to creatures that seem hyper-focused on one way of living, even if that way looks bizarre to us. From a human perspective, these animals often feel like outliers, exceptions, or mistakes. But in their isolated worlds, they are perfectly normal. There is no reference point telling them they look strange. They are simply the outcome of uninterrupted adaptation to a particular place. What makes this especially fascinating is that similar environments in different parts of the deep sea can produce very different results. Two isolated populations facing comparable conditions may evolve completely different solutions. Without shared history or interaction, evolution explores multiple paths simultaneously. And the deep sea is full of parallel experiments that never compare notes. This isolation-driven diversity also explains why deep-sea animals can look so unlike anything at the surface, or even unlike each other. There is no single blueprint guiding their evolution. Each population writes its own rules, shaped only by local conditions and time. In this way, the deep sea becomes less like a single ecosystem and more like a gallery. Each niche displays a unique solution to survival, shaped by isolation and freedom from competition. Some designs look elegant, others look chaotic. All of them work where they live. So when you see a deep-sea creature that feels almost unreal, remember that you are looking at the product of long isolation and evolutionary independence. No crowds, no conformity, just life, alone with its environment and experimenting endlessly in the dark. By this point in the journey, the deep sea has stopped being random and started behaving like a very strict teacher. At first glance, its creatures look chaotic, mismatched, even suspicious, like they were assembled during a power outage. But once you zoom out and stop judging them by surface world standards, a pattern emerges. Every odd feature is a response. Every strange shape is an answer to a very specific question the environment keeps asking. The mistake we often make is assuming there is a default version of life, and everything else is a deviation. In reality, surface life is just one outcome shaped by light, warmth, and abundance. The deep sea simply plays by different rules. When those rules change, the answers change too. Biology is not broken down there. Ours, it is optimized for a different exam. What ties all these adaptations together is constraint. The deep ocean limits energy, encounters, and margin for error. Under those conditions, evolution becomes ruthlessly practical. Traits are not selected because they are impressive or elegant, but because they solve problems efficiently. The result is life that looks unusual, only because we are used to a different set of solutions. Seen through that lens, the deep sea starts to feel less like a collection of monsters and more like a catalogue of clever compromises. Nothing is extra. Nothing is wasted. Features exist because they earn their keep. If something looks exaggerated, it is because subtlety was not enough. If something looks absent, it is because it was not needed. This is where the deep sea quietly dismantles our sense of beauty. Well, we tend to associate beauty with symmetry, balance, and familiarity. The deep ocean does not care about any of that. Its version of beauty is functionality under pressure. If a trait increases survival even slightly, it is worth keeping, regardless of how unsettling it looks to us. Once you understand this, the weirdness becomes logical. The creatures stop feeling like mistakes and start feeling like specialists. They are not trying to be everything. They are trying to be exactly what their environment demands, no more and no less. That narrow focus is what gives them their alien appearance. There is also a humbling lesson here about perspective. Many deep-sea animals look strange to us because we are outsiders. We are judging them by criteria that do not apply. In their world, they are not bizarre. They are appropriate. Well, we are the ones who would look ridiculous down there, glowing with heat, burning energy, and panicking after a few minutes without air. When all these traits are viewed together, a single theme emerges: coherence. The deep sea produces bodies, behaviors, and lifespans that all point in the same direction. Everything aligns with the demands of darkness, pressure, distance, and scarcity. Nothing contradicts the environment. The system makes sense, even when individual organisms still look like they might ask you for money in a dark alley. This coherence is what makes the deep sea so fascinating. It is not chaotic. It is precise. It shows us what evolution looks like when stripped of excess and pushed into extreme conditions. The results may not be pretty by our standards, but they are honest. And perhaps that is why these creatures linger in our imagination. They remind us that life is flexible beyond our expectations. It can stretch, compress, simplify, and reinvent itself in ways that feel almost unbelievable. The deep sea does not just host strange life. It reveals how adaptable life truly is. By tying these differences together, the deep ocean stops being a horror show and becomes a lesson in context. Every trait, no matter how unsettling, fits perfectly once you understand the rules of the place. The creatures are not wrong. They are exactly right for where they live. And in realizing that, we are left with a final, uncomfortable thought. If evolution judged us by deep-sea standards, we would be the weird ones. As we rise back toward the surface in our imagination, the ocean slowly brightens, pressure eases, and movement becomes easier. Life starts looking familiar again. Fish regain recognizable shapes. Colors return. Everything begins to resemble the version of nature we are comfortable with. And it is tempting, at that moment, to think of the deep sea as an exception, a strange, distorted basement beneath the real world. But that instinct misses the point entirely. The deep sea is not an anomaly. It is a reminder. Those creatures down there do not look strange because something went wrong. They look strange because they are perfectly matched to a place that challenges nearly every assumption we have about how life should work. Their forms are reflections of their environment, just as ours are reflections of ours. When the rules change, the outcomes change. Biology follows opportunity and constraint, not familiarity. At the surface, we are spoiled by abundance. Energy flows freely. Food webs are busy and crowded. Life can afford speed, colour, redundancy, and even waste. The deep sea strips all of that away. It asks life to survive with less information, less energy, fewer encounters, and more time. The bodies that emerge from that challenge are not decorative. They are honest. What makes this realization powerful is that it extends beyond the ocean. The deep sea shows us that life is not fragile in the way we often imagine. It is not limited to a narrow band of conditions that resemble our own. It is opportunistic, flexible, and remarkably creative. If there is a stable source of energy and time to adapt, life will find a way to exist, even if the result looks nothing like what we expect. This is why deep-sea creatures feel so important, even to people who will never see them in person. They expand our understanding of what is possible. They challenge the idea that intelligence, beauty, or success has a single look. They remind us that our version of normal is just one outcome among many. There is also a quiet humility in recognizing this. We tend to view ourselves as the benchmark for life, consciously or not. The deep sea gently dismantles that assumption. Down there, our bodies, behaviors, and priorities would be liabilities. We are optimized for sunlight, oxygen, and constant motion. Remove those, and we quickly fall apart. The deep-sea animals we call strange are the ones truly at home in their world, and perhaps that is why they captivate us. They feel alien not because they are unnatural, but because they evolved without us in mind. They are reminders that nature does not revolve around human preferences. It revolves around survival. As we return fully to the surface, carrying these images with us, the contrast becomes clear. Two worlds exist within the same ocean, shaped by different pressures and possibilities. Neither is more real than the other. They are simply different answers to different questions. The deep sea proves that life does not aim for beauty, familiarity, or comfort. It aims for persistence. If that means glowing, flattening, slowing down, or turning into something that looks like it escaped from a science fiction film, so be it. The goal is not to be recognizable. The goal is to keep going. And that may be the most profound takeaway of all. No matter how extreme the environment, no matter how strange the outcome, life adapts, it bends, and it compromises. It reinvents itself. The deep sea is not a warning about how weird life can get. It is a celebration of how resilient life truly is. So the next time you see a deep sea creature that looks nothing like anything you recognize, remember this. It is not wrong. It is not broken. It is a perfect expression of a world that plays by different rules. And in that darkness, far below the surface, life is doing exactly what it has always done. It survives.